There's no city in all of gaming that has quite the same allure as Final Fantasy VII's Midgar. It's a city that's so iconic, it's usually one of the first things to come to mind when thinking about FF7. And although it's the first area in the game, serving essentially as the game's tutorial, the average player will spend around 4 to 5 hours here just meddling in Shinra affairs. And while you get a very good glimpse of the city, you don't get to see everything. So when it was announced that Final Fantasy VII Remake's first game would make the prominent city so expansive that it was 2 full Blu-ray discs worth of content on just Midgar, I was personally ecstatic, though many people you could say had anxious hearts. And that's something I can understand. Many people were hoping they would get to ride a chocobo over at least part of the overworld map, see Yuffie or the Golden Saucer, but unfortunately much of that will be saved for subsequent games in the remake series. But with that said, a full game of Midgar presents a delightful opportunity to expand the lore of Final Fantasy VII in a way in which we've only dreamed of. First and foremost, there's a development perspective on why they decided to make this game solely focus on Midgar. Especially in games like Final Fantasy VII, you tend to think of something that is at most a few screens big, with a few indoor locations that you can explore. But Midgar is much more massive than that. In fact, Midgar has several individual towns inside of it, with many of these sectors featuring several shops, NPCs, and various other content in it. Functionally speaking, Midgar is more like a collection of cities and areas than just one big city itself. And from this development perspective, you can see how time-consuming and expensive it would be to make this in current generation assets. And that's before you even add anything else to the city. And when you consider that you can't return to Midgar until very late in the game, then the fundamental need from the development side to make a full game around Midgar becomes abundantly clear. Midgar is not just a video game city or location. In itself, it feels like a character. It has so many identifiable characteristics, from its haunting and atmospheric music, its dark color palette, its big pizza shape, the citizens that inhabit it, and the events that transpire all serve to make Midgar the type of place you wouldn't find anywhere else. Despite Midgar being the most technologically advanced city in the world, it shows that not all advancements are steps forward, from exposing the immense greed of Shinra, which is endless without bounds, and just how far they're willing to go to extend the reaches of their power. Midgar contains all the themes of Final Fantasy VII in one place, and it allows you to truly grasp the story's central ideas from the very start of the game. Even though in the original game we're given quite a big taste of the city, there's still so much that we never even got to touch. And considering just how massive the city actually is, there is massive amounts of potential to build content here. We are going to see a Midgar in its most unabridged state. It's said that all 8 sectors of Midgar, which in themselves are individual towns, once all had unique names, but now they've been forgotten in favor of just referring to them by the sector number. One thing I would love in this remake is actually getting to know the forgotten name of each of these sectors. My hopes are that we dive further into the defining characteristics of the city, exposing the culture of Midgar, utilizing these HD graphics to show us the poverty that the citizens live in, and the effects of the Mako pollution. We've seen leaked screenshots of the Shinra propaganda videos, which are made to demonstrate to the world just how wonderful life in Midgar is. And I'm already in love with this concept, as it functions as a type of world building piece that you can only get from a game solely focused on taking the game's lore to exponential heights. There's also the gameplay elements which seem to be getting an expansion that I'm super excited for, with there now potentially being multiple scenes where Cloud will be able to ride across the highways of Midgar, and not just to escape from Shinra HQ. In fact, you may be able to traverse across Midgar using the motorcycle, which is something that I've always wanted. Something that could only happen with a full game around Midgar. But of course, more than just the city itself, the citizens of Midgar are what intrigues me the most. Biggs, Wedge, Jesse are characters that are gone within the first 2 or so hours of the game, but now we're going to really get to know who they are and get more detailed backstories on them. They're going to feel much more real than they ever have, and to know these characters on a much more intimate level is going to make the loss of them absolutely devastating. We also seem to be getting much more on those inside of Shinra, such as the president himself, who was pretty much glossed over in the original game, as he was taken care of pretty quickly, and also get a better grasp on the organization itself, which compilation titles like Before Crisis and Crisis Core have done, but this will put it all in one cohesive place. It's interesting to me how so many people find it difficult to imagine a full game's worth of content in Midgar, but I personally find it to be an endless place of potential, from its 8 sectors, many of which are barely grazed upon, to its intriguing themes that heavily relate to real life. Midgar is one of the most essential places in Final Fantasy VII's story. It sets the tone for what's to come, establishes a story, and shows the dark parts of Final Fantasy VII's world, a world that's already been conquered. Shinra, who would serve as the evil empire in any other game, are an integral and inescapable part of people's lives. So many people hold a grudge against Shinra, and yet they're forced to be dependent on them. These are powerful themes that are most directly touched on in Midgar. This is going to give Final Fantasy VII Remake an incredibly sturdy foundation to build the rest of its epic upon. So Ultima Weapons, I want to know, are you excited for a full game of Midgar? Subscribe, click the bell icon, and let me know in the comments below. And if you've been enjoying my content, be sure to check out the Patreon for the Night Sky prints. Thanks to people like Drewcade, I'm able to keep coming on here and making all these Final Fantasy VII videos. So if you value what I do here and want to support it, be sure to check the link in the description below. Shout out to Drew and the rest of the Ultima community.
One soul's cry, a passion.